In 2017, I had a gig at a warehouse facility as the outdoor security guard, working at the main gate. The whole warehouse was fenced in, with only 2 gates, a main one at the front and a smaller one at the back. I always joked the warehouse looked like a prison, and it was far away from the main areas of the city. This warehouse was a half-mile off the highway, in the middle of a field. The job was straightforward. I'd sit in this tiny security box next to the main gate and ensure no one comes around. Sometimes employees would need to get in the middle of the night, or a late delivery would come through, but usually it would stay quiet overnight. I always had another security guard to talk to, though, working at the back gate. I'll call him Corey, just to remain anonymous. Me and Corey would radio back and forth all night, which helped the shifts go by quicker. Rarely did we ever actually see each other in person, or need to go to the other posts outside of our small security boxes. Foot patrols were unnecessary because we had access to live camera feeds all around the perimeter of the warehouse complex. This happened on what I thought would be a normal, quiet night. I got into my booth at 10 p.m. The next hour I spent checking people in and out of the warehouse and letting a couple late deliveries in, and from about 12 a.m. it was dead. No more people coming in or out. At some point, Corey radioed to me. "Hey, did you hear that? Just a minute ago. Sounded like someone screaming." I responded that I had no idea what he was talking about, and was sure he was messing with me. "No, really. I swear I heard someone yelling around the side of the gates." I told him I knew nothing about it. His voice did seem more serious than usual, though, maybe a little shaky even. I double-checked all the live feeds, but didn't see anything. 15 minutes later, Corey got back on the radio, saying my name in an urgent voice. I picked it up and asked what he needed. There was a pause. Then he came back over the radio. "Do you see that?" I looked around. It was very quiet outside, and just before I was going to respond, I saw what he was talking about. There was a light, like a flashlight, moving around in the field by the warehouse. It was way too far back and dark to see anything other than the light, though. Corey said he could see it on the live feed and asked if I had a better view since it was on my side, but neither of us could make out who it was out there or what they were doing. We monitored the light for a while, watching it move through the field until it reached a section that neither of us had a good view of. The cameras on that side didn't look out that much and were basically just focused right up on the gate. After that, it was quiet for a good 45 minutes to an hour. The light never showed up again. It was just a little after 3 a.m. that the radio suddenly clicked on. But Corey didn't say anything, and after 5 seconds it clicked off, without him saying anything at all. I grabbed it and asked if he was good. No answer. "Corey, you there?" Still nothing. I was gonna just shrug it off, but something in me felt different about this. I switched my monitors over to Corey's side, facing his security booth by the back gate. I didn't see him. He wasn't at his station. I waited for a few minutes before thinking about it too much, but after 10 minutes went by with no signs of him or responses on the radio, I started checking the backlogs on the security footage. I rolled them back to 15 minutes ago, about when my radio had suddenly clicked on. My eyes widened and I leaned in. Just a few minutes after 3 a.m., Corey randomly left his station. He stepped out and up to the exit door next to the gate. He unlocked and opened it, then walked outside of the warehouse complex and into the field. I saw him take out his radio and just stand there for a second before putting it back. And then he was gone. He walked into the dark, and after scrubbing through all the footage, I didn't see him coming back. I quickly hurried out of my booth and started making my way to the back gate. I wasn't technically supposed to leave my station for any means, but I was genuinely worried. And yeah, I probably should have called the cops, or let someone know, but I was really hoping this was nothing, and Corey would meet me back at his station with some crazy, stupid excuse for everything. Not to mention, calling the cops on shift, which we've had to do before, is a huge headache. Tons of paperwork and nonsense company stuff to go through, even if it ends up being nothing. I got to the back gate, and Corey still wasn't there, so I unlocked the exit door and looked out into the field. Almost right away, my radio clicked on again, but no voice or even sounds came through. I called out to him, on the radio and just yelling out into the field, but he didn't answer. Though after a whole minute of yelling out into this dark void of a field in front of me, a light suddenly appeared in the distance, the same one I'd seen out by my gate earlier. I took a few steps closer, trying to get a better look. The light was moving, going further out toward where the tree line starts, way back behind the field. I almost started to run toward it before I stopped myself, realizing this was crazy, and getting this extremely disturbing, unsettling feeling in my gut. I stood and thought about what to do for a moment, then hurried back to Corey's station and called for help. It felt almost defeating, like by calling, somehow everything felt more real now. As I waited, I watched the light get dimmer as it continued to the back of the field and eventually faded out. Corey was still nowhere to be seen. Police got there and the company ran a huge investigation and a search effort to find Corey, but he never showed up. The leading theory, at least for the company and the police station, is he was curious about the light and left his station to get a closer look or confront the person out there, only for something really horrible to happen. But to me, it makes no sense. No way he would leave his station like that and walk all the way out there, and definitely not without telling me first. Not just because there was a light in the field. He had to have seen something else. And what's scary is it very well could have been me in his position. Whatever the hell really happened that night that ultimately led to Corey's disappearance could have happened to me. And in that case, I likely wouldn't be around to write this. I've been a security guard for most of my adult life, working in countless different places and environments. This happened almost 8 years ago now, and it is still by far the most disturbing and strange thing that I've ever experienced. I was on the West Coast working in a pretty small, older town, and I had been relocated to start working in a new building, specifically at a place that the city has had trouble with for a few years. It was a large, abandoned shop right on the edge of town that had been vacant for decades. However, over the few years before hiring security, the amount of break-ins were ramping up, and a lot of horrible activity started to go on near the building. The kind of stuff you only get away with if no one else is around. The city tried keeping the lights on inside the abandoned store to deter people, but it didn't help much. And after a couple went missing around there, they hired the security company I worked for to keep some guys out there to make sure people stayed away. Thankfully, most nights I didn't work alone. Darren was an older guy that worked through the nights with me, 4 out of my 5 shifts a week. And for the first 3 weeks being stationed there, nothing happened. We had these temporary security camera rigs set up on the outside of the building and would mostly hang out in the room with the monitors, checking the feed. Every once in a while, we'd get a motion alert from a couple of teenagers walking up to the building, but as soon as they got close, saw the lights and cameras, they'd run off. Now, we did do walkarounds of the inside of the building, because we hadn't set up cameras on the interior, though it was just a quick 5-minute walk through all the back hallways and rooms without checking too hard, because we had cameras on the outside, so if someone had gotten in, we'd see it. And hopefully the motion detection would pick it up as well, although it was less reliable. One night, around 1 a.m., Darren left the building to take a leak in the woods right behind it. When he left, I obviously got an alert from one of the motion detectors of him walking away. But just about 30 seconds later, I got another alert on one of the other monitors, picking up motion near the front door. There was a man in dark clothing walking right up to the door. A moment later, I heard loud knocks against the door from down the hall. For a second, I thought he might have been someone with our security company coming out here for some reason, because he walked up so casually. But when I started to head down the hall toward the door, the man continued to hit the door repeatedly, in a way that made me second-guess myself. Then I heard the back door open from Darren walking back in, and the knocking immediately went silent. When Darren saw me in the hall, I told him someone was at the door, and we both ran back to the monitors. No one was there anymore. He quickly wrote the whole thing off as a joke of me to try and scare him. I didn't know what else to do or say, so I just forgot about it. Whoever was out there left anyway. The rest of that night was quiet, and the following 2 nights I worked with Darren were quiet as well. But the third night was one that I worked alone, and around that same time, 1 a.m., that same man came back to the building. I admit I was resting my eyes when the monitor alert came through. It's harder to stay awake when working alone, but as soon as I saw the guy, I was wide awake. Although this time he didn't knock on the door, he looked more like he was trying to find a way in. He was creeping around the building, trying to see through the windows and testing all the door handles. I could even hear from inside the building every time he would try to open a door or push open a window. After a few minutes, he gave up and walked away. I wrote down a report of it in the logs, but figured it was just some idiot waiting to see if security was still here. 2 more weeks went by after that. On all of my alone shifts and shifts with Darren, nothing more happened outside of the ordinary occasional visits by drunk teens. But then, on one of my days off, I got a call from the security coordinator at the company I worked for. There was an incident with Darren during his solo shift last night. I asked a ton of questions, but I got a very vague, useless explanation. Essentially, that something happened to Darren the previous night while he was alone there, and he immediately left his station at the abandoned store and quit. No 2-week notice or anything, just quit right on the spot. I tried prying for anything more, but I didn't get anything. I even texted Darren's cell phone, but he blocked me after a couple of texts without even responding. We weren't great friends or anything, but we did get along well, so this was really strange to me. It obviously had me a little unsure about going back, but when the time came, I ultimately just went on with my shifts. Of course, alone now. That first night back, I stayed very aware and alert. I thought about all the possibilities of what could have happened to Darren. Some easygoing, chill guy to just pick up and leave so suddenly. Though one of the biggest unspoken rules of being a security guard in places like this is to not let yourself have any type of imagination. Overthinking everything only makes the job harder. After a while, I told myself he probably just hated working alone and decided to leave. I mean, if something really bad actually happened, surely the company would be required to let me know. I stayed in the monitoring office for a while, then got up to do my walkarounds. I looked around a bit more thoroughly, given the circumstances, opening all the doors and checking in the rooms. And in one of the rooms right near the back door, I found something off. The window was shattered, and I knew it wasn't like that before, because all the other broken windows were boarded up. This was recently broken, probably during Darren's last shift. Now, things felt more serious. I walked up to it and looked around. It was dark and cold outside, and eerily quiet. And suddenly, I heard a beeping alarm from down the hall. It was the motion sensor alarm. And just a moment later, I heard a stick crack behind me, and I saw something move outside the window. There was someone out there, standing just far enough to be out of sight. I could really only see the bottom of their legs, hardly lit up by the temporary lights on the outside of the building. I stared at them for 20 seconds before they started to speak. Quietly, between soft cries, they were whispering help or help me. I never felt more scared in my life. I ran back to the monitoring room and got on the line with the police. They started heading out there right away. I then did what we were always trained to do, to lock up the room and wait for the police to get there and take care of it. A few minutes into waiting, I began hearing the voice again, calling out to me from where the broken window was. I was absolutely horrified. When the police arrived, I ran out and told them everything, and left as soon as I could. I quit in the morning and didn't care to find out what was really going on out there. I figure something similar likely happened to Darren. I can't imagine who was next up in line to post up at the abandoned building. I'm just glad I didn't stay any longer than I did. Several years ago, I got an unusual gig as a security guard. Not the typical corporate type, but for a single, small family. They were obviously very rich, and had a huge 100-acre property in the forest with a mansion right in the center. I guess before I was hired, they had gone multiple years living on the property with no issues. However, they had an encounter a month or so before hiring me that must have scared them enough to pay for full-time security 7 nights a week. Between me and the other guy who covered my days off, the family had to have been paying over 100 grand a year, so whatever happened really scared them. But they didn't tell me anything specific about it, probably not to scare me away. The first few months were good. I'd get there around 9 p.m. and stay awake until 5 a.m., walking the perimeter every hour. During the in-between times, I would stay inside the house and walk the bottom floor, checking out the windows and just standing around. Most of the family would be asleep or upstairs in their bedroom while I was there, and the mansion was so large anyway that even when they did come downstairs, I hardly ever noticed. And weirdly enough, half of the time, the family wasn't even at the house. They were on long, extended vacations, so I'd have the whole place to myself, walking through an empty, quiet mansion and patrolling through the woods all alone out there. Kinda creepy, but also easy money. That was until May 1st. The whole family packed and left for another long 4-week vacation. First couple nights, I settled into my routine of having the house alone again. Now, don't get me wrong, I remained professional even while they were gone. I never slouched on the sofa or snooped through the rooms or did anything crazy in their house. Even though they said they didn't have any, I'm sure they had cameras and stuff hidden everywhere. The most I'd do is pull a chair up to the front of the house so I could relax a bit while looking out the windows. By the time this vacation had come around, I'd been working with them for 5 months without a single incident, so I was not very high alert, nor did I feel like I needed to be. If something came up, I'd take care of it, but I wasn't actively worrying about anything. But one of the nights, around 2 a.m., I went for a perimeter walk around the mansion. The woods were very quiet, just like always, though I started to get an uneasy gut feeling, that instinctual feeling that someone was watching me. I immediately stopped walking and stood still for a second, looking around, so if someone was watching, they would see that I was aware. I didn't see anything, though. After a moment, I continued walking the perimeter. There were no other signs of anything or anyone being out there. It took about 20 minutes to make a full, slow walk around the house. Then I headed back inside, although I still felt a little off. Usually when the family was away, I didn't bother going through the entire inside of the place and turn on all the lights. I basically turned on the lights near the front and back of the house, where the 2 main entrances were, and would leave the whole inside dark. But it was really bothering me this night. I kept feeling the need to check over my shoulder and look inside the house at the dark hallways. About an hour later, one of the home phones in the house went off. It was strange for anyone to be calling this late, but I had no clue where that phone was located in the house, and also had no reason to check it, as it almost certainly was not for me. I had my work phone on me 24/7 for them to call if they needed me. And after just a few rings, the call ended anyway. With only a few hours left, I managed to tough it out and ignore the feelings. The following night, I was feeling a lot better for the first 3 or 4 hours. But then, in the middle of the night, as I was sitting on a chair near the front window, I heard something behind me. A bunch of quick, quiet thumps resonating through the entire inside of the house. I'd say it sounded like footsteps, except it was so muffled and echoey that I couldn't be sure. I had no idea where to even look to figure out what it was. I got up from my chair and walked into the middle of the first floor, where it was dark, and I waited there for a minute to see if I'd hear it again. I'd say 2 or 3 minutes went by, when it suddenly happened again, echoing down the empty hallways. It was definitely from above me, either second or third floor. I went to the staircase and headed up to the main second floor hallway. I realized pretty quick once I got up there that I honestly didn't even know where to begin looking, or where any of the hallways or doorways led to. I'd never been up to the upper floors before. I decided to just go up to the third and look down that main hallway, but I again saw nothing, so I just went back downstairs, then did another rounds of the lower floor. While down there, I heard that same sound several more times. The mansion was so large and echoey that it was just impossible to even investigate it, and I really didn't think it was worthwhile. Because of how consistent the sound was, I was pretty sure it was just the house making noises. When the next hour came around, I headed outside to walk the perimeter again. I walked the first section of the house, and then the next, making it to the side. This side had dense trees, but also had a small drivable path, sort of a side access route that I believe the family used for ATVs and stuff. I walked a little closer to the tree line, just looking around for nothing in particular, when I noticed a shape that stood out to me. Deep into the woods, maybe 40 feet from the path, there was something in the dark that just didn't fit in with all the trees. My eyes could hardly make it out, so I stepped a little further into the woods. It was a car, some old beat-up car wedged between the trees. Definitely not one that the family owned. It was pitch black out there, so I had to get right up close to it to investigate. And I could clearly make out the tire tracks on the forest floor, meaning it had to have gotten there recently. Surely the family would have noticed it out there during the day if it had gotten there before they left on vacation. I mean, it was pretty close to the house, definitely close enough to be visible during the day. Nobody was inside of it, and strangely, both license plates were removed. I stayed for a minute to look at the surrounding trees. In that moment, finding something off like this, it sort of settled over me just how isolated I was out there, and how I could be in serious danger. I got uneasy and hurried out of the woods. I sent the family a message as I walked back into the house, letting them know and asking if they had seen it before. The instant I walked back in and closed the door behind me, I heard that same series of thumping sounds right above me. I got really nervous. Now I felt like I really needed to figure out what the hell I was hearing. So I headed up to the second floor. I walked down the hallway this time, but it remained very quiet. There was another section at the end of this hallway, leading to more doors. Everything was closed off though, and again, I didn't know where any of them led to. But then, as I was there, I heard the sounds again from directly above me. They were so loud this time, I was sure it was footsteps running right above on the third floor. I quickly ran back to the stairs and up to the next hallway. I didn't see anything, so I took a few steps down the hallway. When I got to the middle, I noticed one of the doors on the end was open. I had no idea what that room was, or if the door had already been open. Before walking closer, I quickly checked if the family had responded, but they hadn't. Then I walked up to the doorway and peered in. It was a massive bedroom, maybe the main one, but there was stuff all over the bed. At first, I thought maybe the family had rushed packing and left the room disorganized. But the more I looked, the more I realized this was much worse. Stuff was everywhere, like the room had been scavenged through. Before I got a chance to look any further, a door suddenly slammed on the other end of the hallway by the staircase. I quickly left the room and looked back down the hallway, hearing footsteps running through the halls below me now. I was genuinely scared for my life at this point, and immediately dialed 911. I wasn't sure whether to run or hide or what, so I just stayed there while I was on the line, and I heard multiple doors opening and slamming shut, and footsteps moving through the hallways of the house. There were at least 3 or 4 of them. After a minute, the footsteps and thumps moved through the bottom floor, and then the house went silent. I think I waited 5 minutes before carefully heading down and looking around. Didn't see anything until I got to the side of the house. Out the window, I could see the headlights from that old car. The car wasn't really moving though, and after a few minutes, the lights shut off. Nearly 40 minutes later, officers finally showed up. I told them everything, and was still trying to get a hold of the family. When the officers searched around, they found the car still in the trees, looking like it had gotten stuck and everyone bailed. But the car was stripped of everything, and had nothing to trace back to its owner. The next few days were pretty crazy with everything going on. Turned out the family really didn't have any cameras at the house, which was insane to me, especially after they had a previous encounter and went through hiring security guards. What that previous event was, I still didn't get any info on. And as for what the group that broke into the mansion was looking for, I also don't know. I assume both incidents were connected somehow, but that's just my guess. Of course, after all of this, I quit, feeling like I was being left in the dark about a lot of things, and wasn't really sure what I was in the middle of by working with this family. And likely, I was not qualified for what they needed. This family needed real security, like cameras, multiple guards, and all that stuff. Not just some guy like me to keep lookout and call the police when something happens. Every time I think back on that night, it scares me even more. Had I come face to face with that group, anything could have happened, and no one would have been around to help. I honestly think if I did manage to see even just one of them, then they likely wouldn't have just run off like they did, knowing I saw and could possibly identify them. Safe to say, I got lucky.